What's going on, guys? This is Chandler Smith, and one of the biggest concerns or questions that I'm getting right now is, Chandler, how is inflation, rising interest rates, and all of the other craziness that's going on in the world right now going to impact the real estate market and us real estate investors? And so in this video, I'm gonna answer that question and a lot of others to help make sure that you are in the right place as we go through all of this craziness. So with all of that being said, let's jump into it. All right, guys, in today's video, we're gonna talk about what is inflation, what causes inflation, how inflation affects interest rates, how interest rates affect you as a buyer, and how all of this is going to come together so that you can make the proper decisions as a real estate investor, as a potential home buyer, and just as someone living in these absolutely insane times, because there are so many balls up in the air, and we're gonna hopefully put you in a place where, one, you know what all those balls are, and you can make sense of them, and you can make the right moves. I'm gonna break down all of this for you. All that I ask you to do is remember to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell. We're gonna be covering some extremely important information. I want to share a little story that I think is going to hopefully give you some perspective on everything that's going on right now. Now, once upon a time, there was a little boy, and he had a rock, and he threw this rock, and it landed on the sidewalk. Well, right as he threw it, there was a biker coming. The biker swerved, and the biker went out into the road. He caused a massive bus to swerve and run right into the side of the building. Well, unfortunately, he hit the building right at the right spot, and this building tipped over, and it came down on a power plant. Instantly, all of the power in the city went out. Rioters hit the streets, and pretty soon, Joe Rogan and the president were in a total fist fight. The world is in total upheaval, and we went into another world war. Now, maybe this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but the big question is, do we blame the kid that threw the pebble? Do we blame the biker? Do we blame the bus? Do we blame Joe Rogan or Joe Biden? Who knows? But there are so many different factors in play and so many different things that could happen with the situation we're currently dealing in that I want you to understand. First of all, this is not financial advice. Well, it kind of is, but it's not. And second of all, I'm gonna do my best to break down each one of these topics so that you can understand them better and so that you can look at your personal situation and make your own assumptions about what all of these things are going to cause. I want you to understand inflation and the impact it's going to have. I want you to understand rising interest rates. I want you to understand what I think it's going to cause to happen and what I'm planning on doing to protect myself. But I want you to be able to step back and look at all these situations so that you can make proper decisions for you and your family and your future. And there are just so many things in play. So no one completely knows what's going to happen or what this is going to cause. But I'm going to make my best guess and do all of the things that if it does happen or if it doesn't happen, you're still protected moving into this next phase. Now, the first thing that I want to hit on is inflation. Now, if you're watching any news at all or even talking to friends and family, you probably know that inflation is on the rise and it's in a big way. Now, inflation can be caused by a myriad of things. Inflation can be caused by the fact that there isn't enough supply and there is a ton of demand, which we're currently dealing with because of COVID, because of issues getting products to where they need to be, because of a myriad of other things going on in Canada, going on around the world. There are so many different things that can cause issues with supply and demand, but that has caused inflation. There's also the fact that the government infused our society with a ton of cash. There's way more cash in play than there was a couple of years ago, and by a big margin. I mean, we have put a ton of new cash into the United States, and as a government, some will say that's really bad, some will say it was necessary. I'm not gonna dive into that. All that you need to know is there are lots of things that are causing inflation, and they've said, hey, this is transitory. Whether I believe that or not, I'm gonna lean towards no, but some people are saying, no, this is a temporary thing, it's not going to continue. I personally think that we haven't seen how bad inflation is really going to get. I think we're going to continue to see a lot more inflation. And essentially what inflation is your dollar becomes worth less, which means everything you want to buy is more expensive. What you could used to be able to buy for $1 is now costing $1.07 according to what they've said inflation is, when in reality, in a lot of things, what a dollar used to be able to buy, right now it's costing $1.25 or $1.50, or in some things, $2. So I think we're on the very front end of the massive inflation we're going to see. Now, some people might disagree with me, but that's something you're gonna have to decide for yourself. Essentially what that means though, is I can promise you moving forward, every single day, every single year, your dollar is becoming worth less and less. Here's the thing with inflation. It causes a myriad of different issues, but one of the things it's been known to cause is rising interest rates. Now, I'm not gonna dive into why this is the case, because then we've got to talk bonds and yields and a bunch of stuff that I don't usually enjoy talking about, but also it takes a lot to explain. You just need to understand not only are we dealing with inflation, but we're also heading into a time period where I can promise you interest rates are going to continue to go up, and they've already gone up substantially. Both of these things affect your buying power, because not only are properties costing more because your dollar isn't going as far, but with interest rates going up, you're going to have substantially higher payments on purchasing properties that have gone up. So you're kind of getting beat up in two ways if you're trying to purchase real estate or purchase anything really, because the prices are going up and using debt to purchase these things is going up. And so that's limiting your buying power. Here's the thing that's so fascinating about the place that we find ourselves in, is there are so many crazy things that are going on right now, but on top of all of this craziness, there is lower supply for housing than there has ever been, and it doesn't look like that's changing. When you look at lots of different statistics, you can see that there are less homes right now for sale than we've ever seen before. Maybe not ever, but it's been a long time since it's been this low, as you can see from this chart. On top of that, it just doesn't look like it's changing. As a matter of fact, it looks like there's less and less supply for housing than there's ever been. And a lot of us real estate investors are really feeling that. A lot of us that are trying to buy a home are really feeling that. So it's weird, because even though we have less and less buying power, and we can see that's going up, we also have less and less things to buy, which technically, like I talked about earlier, supply and demand causes that. But at some point, in my opinion, one has to affect the other. So I know this is kind of the concept we just talked about not having supply, and that's why things are doing what they're doing. But at some point, I have to believe that will correct things. Now, the unfortunate situation, again, we find ourselves with is there's all kinds of crazy stuff due to COVID. There's crazy stuff due to Russia. There's crazy stuff due to supply chain issues in Canada and in America. I mean, holy crap, there are so many different things at play right now that all I can do in this video is tell you what maybe I'm thinking this is going to cause happen, and then all of the things I'm going to do to prepare so that I'm in a good place. Now, the one thing I will tell you that is fantastic about inflation is if you're like me and you own a lot of assets. I own $25 million worth of real estate. With inflation, I'm pumped that there's low supply and high demand, because as this happens, rents continue to go up. As this happens, property values continue to go up. So if you already own assets, if you already own real estate, this is a great thing to a point, because at some point something's got to give, and maybe a lot of that reverses. And that's one thing that we're concerned about, is if interest rates go too high, if inflation goes too high, if people don't have buying power, there is the risk that immediately everything shifts back the other direction. Now, with the supply and demand thing we've got going on right now, that's not a huge concern that I have right now, but the first piece of advice I'm going to give you for dealing with this situation is be educated and watch the market, especially a market you're investing in, because it is crucial for you to be able to make good decisions, to be able to see what your supply and demand situation is. If you see things starting to turn, that's going to change what you're going to do. Now, if we're not seeing any more homes hit the market, even though it's harder to buy things because people don't have as much buying power, if we still don't have the supply, it doesn't matter. Even if interest rates go up, even if inflation goes up, if we don't have the supply, like, people are just gonna have to live with that. And that is a potential positive if you own real estate right now. The negative is if it gets to the point where all of a sudden we see more and more and more homes that are available. Because then we know maybe the pendulum has started to swing the other direction, where the inflation and the interest rates have had an impact where there is going to be more supply and maybe less demand. And if that starts to happen, then you're going to see prices start to drop. Because if we get to the point where we've got too much supply and not enough demand, that's going to send things the other direction. So is this a concern that I have? Yeah, with rising interest rates, with inflation, like I do worry that maybe people will find a way to just not purchase real estate. And that will swing things the other direction, and that's why I want to be prepared for that. There's also the realistic possibility that things continue to go up. Yeah, maybe your buying power goes down, but it continues to go rampant because there's just not enough supply for what is demanded. So, first things first, make sure that you're following the market as a whole and your personal market so that you can make proper decisions for the real estate you own. And if you're someone that's thinking about buying, a lot of people will come to me and they'll say, Chandler, I just can't find good deals right now. My answer to you is then don't buy. In a crazy market like this, I believe you have to wait until you find a good deal. You have to be aggressive in finding off-market deals. You have to be creative in getting good financing. You've got to find a way to where a deal still meets your criteria. If you're buying a home or a real estate investment, maybe you find a home that you're in love with. You're willing to overpay because you're at a place in life where you can afford it and you want to get into a home. It might not be a bad time right now, but make sure that you are locking in your interest rates for a long period of time. Now, if you're in a rental property that you own and you have a rate that isn't locked, it also might be a good time to refinance and get a rate locked for a long time because we don't know where interest rates are going. And if you have an interest rate you've got locked expire and all of a sudden interest rates have gone through the roof because of the craziness, you're gonna get burned. So please, please, please get your rates locked in for a long time. Make sure you're not buying stupid purchases if they're rentals. Still hold to a good criteria so if the market does dip, you're protected. And if you're buying a home, make sure that you are set up in a way where you know you can afford it and you can sit it out and you've got locked in rates and you're good to stay there if the market does go crazy. The next big thing for both real estate investors and people that are thinking about buying a home in this market is make sure that you've got massive reserves. For me right now, I'm in a place where I don't want to dip below 1 year worth of reserves because things just feel weird to me. There's so many different things at play and I do have legitimate fears that craziness can happen. Now, you can call me a doomsdayer. Maybe things just keep doing what they're doing. Maybe the inflation starts to slow down. Maybe interest rates don't go crazy. Maybe the supply and demand starts to even out a little bit and everything is good. That would be awesome. And I think that there's a very real possibility that that happens. However, you should also be doing all of these things to prepare for the worst case scenario. And that's why for me, I'm gonna make sure that I'm watching the market. I'm gonna make sure all of my interest rates are locked in for an extended period of time. I'm gonna make sure that I've got good reserves. I'm gonna make sure that if I do buy real estate, which I will be buying real estate because you should always be buying real estate, I'm not going to bend to how aggressive the market is and overpay. I'm just gonna work harder to find good deals. I'm gonna make sure that I've got all of these things in place so that I'm protected so that if a worst case scenario does happen, which for a lot of us, we don't even completely know what that would mean, we're at least in a place where we've got reserves, our rates are locked, and we know we can handle whatever that worst case scenario is. And then you've kind of just got to wait it out. Now, again, if you find good deals and you've got all of these things in place, jump on it. If you own real estate right now, make sure that if you've got properties that are coming to the point where those interest rates in a year or two from now are going to be changing, I would be careful because a lot of times those are connected to the prime rate. They're going to bump up and you could be screwed. So it might even be worth looking at those properties and refinancing and trying to get things locked for at least 10 years or longer. Look at everything you've got and determine, hey, what protects me the most so that going into all of this craziness, I feel comfortable. The last thing that I want to say is I think in this video, there's a little bit of fear mongering, and that is not my intention. I am just telling you that inflation is crazy. Like, that is a big deal. That is a real thing, and I don't think it's going to slow down. Interest rates are going up, and I don't see them slowing down. And I think there is a risk that they go up even faster than the Fed has said they're going to go up. Now, maybe I'm wrong. They've said, hey, this is our plan for the next couple of years, and if they follow that plan, it's nothing to be super scared about, even though we do know they're going up. But when you see the craziness that's going on with the supply chains, when you see the craziness that's going on in Russia, when you see the craziness in this world as a whole, For me, I want to make sure that I've got all of the right things in place. So for you real estate investors out there, make sure you've got proper insurance, make sure you've got proper management, make sure that you've got your reserves, make sure that your interest rates are locked in for an extended period of time. And for me, I want everything locked in for at least 10 years. If I've got an interest rate that isn't locked in, which I do, I'm actually in the process of refinancing those properties to get them locked in for the long term. And I didn't have a lot of those, but I did have one seller finance deal that we're going to refinance sooner than we wanted to, just because we want to make sure that our interest rates are in a good place. And I think as you do this, and as you hold to a strict criteria for buying deals, and you hold to a strict criteria for reserves and buying homes, if you're planning on doing that so that you know you're protected, then you can have confidence continuing to buy real estate and have confidence in this market because you're watching, you're seeing what's happening. And there are red flags. The biggest red flag I would keep an eye open for is I would go and I would look over the last 3 to 5 years, how many active listings you've had in your area. And I'd watch that very carefully because right now they're extremely low in almost every market. If that starts to shoot up where you've got tons of active listings, that's going to affect the pricing and it's going to come down and it's going to mess with everything else. So because real estate doesn't move really quickly, right? Like it's going to evolve and take time to change. And if you're watching it, you can be prepared to respond as those things happen. Same with watching interest rates and keeping an eye on how bad inflation is really getting. Finally, for those of you that have invested in real estate, inflation's cool. It is, right? It's good to watch your properties blowing up in price. It's good to watch rents blowing up. But it doesn't mean it can't also bring some bad things if it goes too far. So keep an eye on it and be prepared if the worst case does happen. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell. If you feel like I missed something or you want me to cover other things, make sure you let me know in the comments because here's the deal. Just like I talked about the story with the Pebble, I just talked about a couple big things that for sure will have an impact, but there are so many other things that can have an impact on this current market that we might not know, and that's why you always need to stay smart in the way that you buy deals. Again, if you liked the video, smash the like button, and guys, we'll look forward to seeing you in the future videos. Thanks, have a great day.